You're about to hear about imposter syndrome and breakthroughs while building a business, why empathy is one of the most powerful tools adventure leaders can hold, and how seasonal workers can find sustainability in their work and income, all while chasing their own adventures. This is See Her Outside, stories from women who adventure. I'm your host, Angie Lake. I first fell in love with seasonal work, not because of the river rafting itself. I didn't even know how to raft yet. I fell in love with it because of the community, the adventure, the bigger purpose. A lot of guides and outdoor workers love that beautiful lifestyle that comes with seasonal work. But then there's the tough part of it that people don't love to talk about as much. The pieces of your life that you usually want to stay stable, like housing, healthcare, a mailing address, knowing when you'll get your next paycheck, those things are in constant transition for a lot of seasonal workers. For some of the amazing women in our community, maybe even you listening, every year they get laid off. They have to move, change their address. They easily hit burnout, even though their job involves a sport or passion that they live for. Well, today's guest has developed systems that embrace that flow of a seasonal lifestyle while adding the structure needed to take care of your basic needs. Sasha Clonts is the founder of Guide Theory, a platform helping seasonal workers build more sustainable, empowered lives through coaching, community, and practical tools. Sasha is passionate about helping women build confidence, capability, and self-trust through adventure and unconventional life paths, including seasonal work. Sasha is one of those people who I immediately knew I had to become friends with. I could hear in her voice how much she believes in your impact, that you're more than a raft guide, you're more than a ski instructor or a patroller or a forestry ranger. You're a human who has human needs, and you can leverage systems to keep feeling like a happy, healthy human while making seasonal work for you. But before we get into this awesome conversation, we have a seasonal opportunity that might be on your bucket list. You are invited to our Grand Canyon Rim to Rim guided adventure this October 10th, 2026. We've hosted 2 amazing rim to river hikes in the Grand Canyon in the past year, and together they have fundraised almost $20,000 for Wilderness Scholarship for girls and women. Now, thanks to post-wildfire restoration, we are now able to cross the entire Grand Canyon on foot from the North Rim to the South Rim. If you join us, you will get training support, gear lists, team check-ins, and of course this bucket list canyon adventure. We have a whole episode if you go back in the See Her Outside feed that talks about hiking in the Grand Canyon, so you can go listen to that and see if it will be a fit for you this fall. And if you're already in, snag one of the 9 spots now at the link in the show notes and join us on October 10th in the Grand Canyon. And now, here is Sasha.
So I grew up in Houston and I had a limited amount of outdoor access growing up. So the first time I actually saw snow, I was 18 or 19 years old, and I went on a family ski trip to Steamboat Springs, beautiful place. I have 3 younger sisters, and I have always been more of a risk-averse person. Like when I see a rope swing, I think of all the ways that you're gonna fall off and hit your head. So skiing was such a stretch for me, but I show up and I see snow for the first time. I'm wearing a puffer jacket for the first time in my life. And I just remember knowing that this is supposed to be this fun, cool thing that we get to do and being absolutely terrified. So we make it up to the bunny hill. I spend all day with my ski instructor on the bunny hill, just lapping and lapping. And I'm on the verge of tears just on the bunny hill. And then finally the whole family is going to go up the big mountain together and do a green all the way down. And I see my youngest sister ahead of me. She's 9 and she's bombing down the mountain, no fear, straight pizza, full speed ahead. My other 2 sisters are kind of making their way. My dad's come on, Sasha. And I just look in front of me and I'm totally frozen. I feel completely unprepared. I'd never seen a view like that. Houston doesn't have mountains. So I'm overwhelmed, unprepared, and I just cried and kind of shrank my way down the mountain. I don't even remember getting down the mountain. And I remember being like so mad at myself and thinking that this is supposed to be fun and I'm supposed to be able to do this. It was a really hard experience for me. And little did I know, about 5 years later, I would actually be a ski instructor at Taos Ski Valley. And that experience has like completely impacted how I ski instruct and how I communicate and guide people in the outdoors and life in general.
Mm-hmm. I have a few of those I'm crying trying to learn a sport stories that definitely impact how I talk to people now too. So I get you. Mm-hmm. But how did you shift from, never seeing snow before, not very outdoorsy, to working in and working with people in the outdoor industry? That's a huge jump.
Yeah. So I'll kind of give my quick and dirty life story, I guess. After I graduated from college, I ended up in a management consulting job in Washington, D.C. at the end of 2019. So if you're putting your timeline together correctly, I was remote by March of 2020, about 6 months in. And I've always dealt with imposter syndrome in like every aspect of my life, but going remote for consulting, where you're like talking to clients and advising on things so early in my career, was so negative for my like perception of myself, my intellect, my capability, my mental health, everything. I mean, I think a lot of us struggled during COVID, obviously. But that was kind of the beginning of my, breakdown in a way where I didn't feel like I could really come up for air and get support or a bearing on myself. But I had a great group of friends in DC that focused really hard on getting outside. So even though we were locked down during COVID, we would try to go to West Virginia on the weekends and just be outside. And I think that was the times that I felt like I could breathe, truly. And eventually I got to a place with my job with DC and COVID where I knew I needed to take a break and leave for my own sanity, and like a lot of people, my own mental health. So I did that. And I went to visit my sister who was living in Boulder, Colorado at the time. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to take the winter off and I'm going to go learn to ski. Like, it's been a few years now. I can do it. I'm not afraid. I feel more capable. Long story short, before I even really get to learn to ski, me and my dog get hit by a car. Yeah. And that experience, I think, catapulted my life into the outdoor industry completely. Wow. Because at that point I said, okay, well, let's maybe take a break from this whole plan and take a beat, which was really good for me. Maybe impulsive in that I sold my car, bought a van, and I had a project to focus on. Like the most classic, I feel like, crashed out from corporate job story is selling the car to buy a van. But I had a project to work on. And eventually that project, kind of in a very roundabout way, led me to Taos, New Mexico, which I had like never heard or thought about Taos, New Mexico before. But I said, hey, I'm going to spend one summer out here and just, take a break from the city, from these projects. I'm going to work at this rafting company. It's going to be so chill. I'm going to be an office girl for the rafting company. And I think within pretty much a week of showing up at that boatyard and starting in that office job at the rafting company, I fell completely and utterly in love with seasonal work. And not necessarily the rafting. Like, I didn't know how to raft still, but I just, all of the community, adventure, purpose that I had been missing kind of during COVID and during that weird transitory part of my life, I felt immediately. Like we were all living at this boatyard together, working towards a common goal, with a lot of shared experience. And it was like that lifestyle that initially drew me into the outdoors, like outdoor regardless. That lifestyle is what I needed at the time. And I spent the next few years kind of completely dedicating my life to the outdoors, becoming a ski instructor and starting my own business to help seasonal workers continue to navigate the outdoors.
So that whole part doesn't sound like imposter syndrome to me. I'm like, you threw yourself into this totally new experience and you immediately were like, yes, this is it. These are my people. I love the seasonality of it. Like, what do you think shifted, or were you feeling imposter syndrome just in a different way?
A couple things happened when I showed up. One, I hadn't really been in a kind of community with like a shared goal and purpose like that beyond my family unit. And so I think that was a unique kind of confidence boost and support. And then I also kind of started recognizing my own intellectual capabilities that I hadn't recognized as a consultant or in my, previous education. Because I was seeing what I was able to give back to this company in terms of my own experience. But I think I did still really experience imposter syndrome with raft guiding. So I came in knowing like, hey, I missed training. I also kind of wanted to learn the office permit side of things. So I was like, can I like learn to guide while being in the office? And they were like, sure, you just kind of have to figure it out yourself, like take the initiative there. And that kind of was the imposter syndrome, I think, of just being surrounded by folks who had been in the industry for a long time. It felt really hard to ask questions about the actual raft guiding aspect. And at that point, like joining the community, I really didn't understand like things like being burned out in an outdoor career. Because I'm like, hey, we're outside every day playing in the river. What do you mean you get burned out? Like that didn't even cross my mind. And so I think I came from a place of like not really understanding what the guides were going through. But what ended up really helping me was connecting with the newer guides. And I learned the most about how to start guiding and eventually became a guide the next year from someone who had only been guiding a few months. And I think like that to me is so connected to like my experience skiing and my experience in the outdoors, in that as someone who's learned something recently, you can empathize way more with the feeling of like, I don't even know what questions to ask and I'm scared to mess up because they have been through that more recently. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. I see it all the time too, because it's so much more relatable to collaborate with somebody who's just a step ahead of you instead of 15 years ahead of you. And I think this is true for non-sports too. This could be true for any type of scary new skill, whether it's public speaking or starting a business. Sometimes the most helpful thing you can do is find the person who just did it 3 months ahead of you. I love that. And when you and I were emailing each other, you wrote, I don't even know if you like wrote this so beautifully on purpose or if it was just how it came out, but you told me empathy is one of the most powerful tools in adventure spaces. And I love that. Can you think of a specific time in maybe that era or that chapter of this career where that lesson really came to light for you?
Yes. So I think it's all to do with the ability to put yourself in that new person's shoes. But during that summer when I was first there and I didn't know what I was doing with a boat, I look back on pictures and I'm like, what was my PFD situation? Like I looked like a customer, right? And I think having someone, it was my friend Megan, who was okay with that was the key. So I felt like I spent a good amount of that first summer kind of being a burden tag along a lot of these trips. And I didn't understand a lot of the aspects of like what the guides were going through. And I knew it was important for me to understand that, to like understand this industry and job. But I remember Megan taking me out on the river one day and she taught me the most basic paddle stroke. It's called a J stroke. And no one had taught me that yet. People had been pushing me through rapids and yelling at me to, take us through these rocks or something. But no one had like taught me the most basic paddle stroke. And granted, I didn't go through training in the traditional way my first year. But I think she made me feel so comfortable because she sat down and really like laid everything out for me in a way where I felt comfortable opening up, crying about my season and admitting I didn't know if coming to Taos was the right idea, and what was I doing, and was I being helpful in my role in the office. And I think just giving me that kind of safe space of like, once she was like, hey, has anyone even showed you like how to tighten a cam strap the right way, instead of kind of yelling at me for not doing it the right way, I felt so much more comfortable kind of opening up about everything that was scaring me in this kind of new world. And that changed my confidence and my ability completely. Like just that basic J stroke, I felt more confident to, one, in myself, that like, hey, I know the most basic stroke now. But two, just understanding kind of maybe why I had been kind of treated the way I'd been treated, in terms of people probably expected me to know that a couple months in. And it was just, it changed everything and allowed me to be more comfortable kind of asking questions to specific people. Not everyone, but specific people.
Totally. It sounds like Megan understands how to offer feedback. I was actually a raft guide in Utah and Colorado for a few years, and I learned a lot about both giving and receiving feedback in those years. And it's not like I necessarily learned it overnight, but reflecting back on that time, there's a whole bunch of lessons. And it sounds like Megan did a good job of asking whether you even wanted feedback, or asking like, hey, what was your experience? What have you learned so far? Instead of what a lot of people do is just like show you the right way, or tell you that you did it wrong, or just start giving you feedback without you even consenting to it. I see that a lot in outdoor sports. Was I also going to say that? Yeah, and I think that empathy needs to be built into our feedback systems. Like I've thought a lot too about just the way that sports culture talks about certain, they'll use certain buzzwords, or they'll use colonialist language in a way that's not empathetic, and because it feels excluding to certain people and certain populations. So anyway, bit of a tangent there, but it sounds like you had a good role model.
I think and I think like, I mean, I've been in some industries now, but I think the rafting industry was such a cool one for me to start out in, because I mean, the company I worked with, amazing company, but they were known for having the most veteran guides. Like there were women who'd been working there since the 80s. And I think that in itself was really awesome. One, like that says a lot of good stuff about the company, but I think a lot of times you give what you get, right? And so if you were taught to figure it out on your own, if you were taught like, I'm going to yell at you until you get this right, or watch you flip, or, I'm going to give you what my experience was. And I think I have always kind of rejected that idea. But I definitely think that comes up a lot, especially maybe even for women who have had to. I mean, I've had talks with some of these women since, and coming from a more curious place of like, what was it like in the 90s? Like maybe I'm kind of scared of you because you're like a total badass, like you've run this river forever. But what did you have to go through when this wasn't like a 50-50 women-men company, but you were proving yourself? And it gave me a lot more context to kind of some of the styles, I guess, that I was seeing.
What was your experience like being a woman and a raft guide?
So I ended up, after that year, I ended up becoming a raft guide, but also becoming an office manager. And so I think that is a unique position in itself. And even office, like we called them office girls because it had always been girls. And I think that's funny looking back too, photo girls and office girls. But I think that gave me kind of a unique perspective in comparison to the other women raft guides who were full-time guides, in that I kind of had power in both places, I guess. And I think it also kind of gave me like an excuse to not be the most top-notch raft guide, in all honesty. Like I loved guiding, but I quickly knew it was not for me. Like I am a risk-averse person, which I think is a really good thing in the outdoors, but I didn't get the like fun adrenaline rush from taking people down the river, I was always like, gosh, I hope we make it through. And it didn't feel really great for me. And so I love being on the river now, and I love like private boating. But I never quite felt comfortable enough, I think, to get really good at raft guiding. And it was also hard kind of splitting both roles. So yeah, I think I had kind of a unique experience there in comparison to others. But all the women I guided with were very, very, very good at their jobs and had worked multiple rivers for the most part.
Can you imagine if we called them office boys? We just flipped the script. Right? Well, what was the first inkling for creating guide theory?
Yeah, so Guide Theory is a company that our mission is to help seasonal communities and seasonal workers thrive, not just survive. And it's a selfish mission, truly, because when I showed up to the boatyard in Taos for the first time, like I said, I immediately saw the community, the purpose, the adventure. And I was like, this is a beautiful way of life, like truly beautiful. Except by the end of that summer, I also recognized the burnout one. But I recognized, I was like, hey guys, what are you doing for health insurance and a mailing address and your retirement and all of the things that had been kind of preset for me in corporate America? And the answers were super varied. There was a lot of avoidance also. And what I kind of was recognizing as a pattern was that more veteran guides had spent years and years refining and figuring out like, great, end of the season, I apply for unemployment now and I saved $2,000 to go to Mexico for 3 weeks. Like they had figured out their systems, and people newer to the seasonal industry were kind of forced to figure it out on their own, was my perception, because I couldn't find help. Is what it felt like. And that was pretty much the motivation behind Guide Theories. I wanted my community to have enough money to go to Mexico and have a little bit of money going into retirement. But I didn't want my community going into medical debt or ignoring injuries, especially like as raft guides, as ski instructors, our shoulders, our knees, like they're going through a lot. And to not go to physical therapy because we don't understand our health insurance options is like, to me, all the pieces were there. It just the system of support and the system of how we went about putting those pieces together was not really there because you were constantly in transition.
Okay, it's just blowing my mind that you say that you've always felt imposter syndrome and that you're very risk averse, because starting that type of business not only sounds like super badass and not all imposter syndrome-y, but also it sounds like a risk to start a new business. How did you actually go about that?
Well, yeah, I honestly had never thought of it that way. Like, it feels like something that I have to do for my community. Like, I feel like we need this and deserve this. And I do think the more experiences I get, especially in seasonal work where you're forced into learning a new environment kind of all the time, my confidence has grown a lot. So I think the confidence for building Guide Theory came a lot from the Outdoor Industry MBA program. So I started a remote/hybrid program a couple years into living in Taos at Western Colorado University. And I started it at the time thinking that I wanted to go back to corporate America and but I wanted it to be outdoor adjacent. So I was like, great, there's an outdoor industry MBA program. I can get a job with a big wig outdoor industry company. And I think the program was so helpful because of all of the different projects and capstone that led me to like refining what I wanted to do and my skills and network in the industry. But no matter what, I kept coming back to seasonal worker housing, seasonal worker financials, and seasonal worker economics. And I was fighting it the whole time for some reason, which now in hindsight, I'm like, it's crazy. But I was fighting it because I was like, no, I'm craving stability now after all of this transition in seasonal work. So I'm going to get, a more stable job out of this. But I kept fighting this passion of I'm still surrounded by seasonal workers and want more. So by by the end of the program, which I graduated May of 2025, I had applied to a few jobs, but it was during my in-person graduation week in Gunnison that me and one of the other women in my cohort, Erin Kearns, who she's worked in the ski industry for years, we were talking about, seasonal worker housing and seasonal worker finances and the things that we really cared about. And I hadn't found a new job yet. And I was like, well, I'll keep looking for jobs and things, but what if we just did this? We need this. This has been an issue for the last 3 years that I have not found solutions to. And I've written about it in papers and I've modeled things in projects. What if we just do this on the side temporarily? And yeah, that was in May 2025, and we officially launched Guide Theory in August. I had continued my kind of consulting contract work on the side and was not necessarily gonna launch a company. That wasn't the plan, but I just, I started really believing that I think having seen the stories in the program and continued building my knowledge, especially in the outdoor industry, I started really believing that we could be the ones to start solving this problem, and kind of believing that I can just solve problems myself too. So yeah, it was kind of I think a combination of just getting so many different experiences under my belt where things didn't feel as scary to just try things. But also, I think I would not have started it without me and Erin sitting on this couch having this conversation, because I think what I really needed was a partner to do this with.
Totally. And you have this amazing background that really set you up, it feels, for it, because you have the experience and stories of a seasonal worker, but you also had that office experience and could watch it from behind a desk sometimes. And I think that people who spend a lot of time in nature are also primed for entrepreneurship a lot of the time, because so many business lessons can be taken from nature. I mean, you have to deal with the cyclical ups and downs, just like the seasons. You have to deal with what happens when shit hits the fan and all we have is a cam strap and half a boat, what do we do? And that's a lot of what having a small business is making big things happen with very few resources. So it kind of sounds like this was, it's no surprise to me, I guess, that this idea was tapping you on the shoulder for so long. And I think that when you have both that intrinsic motivation and reminder matched with that extrinsic, somebody else being like, yeah, this is possible, let's do it, that's where the magic can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And an exercise we do a lot during our program called the Shoulder Season Series at Guide Theory is we imagine our 80th birthday. We imagine ourselves at 80 years old looking back. And whenever I do that with Guide Theory, I'm one, I can see it happening and working. But two, I'm oh, all the pieces made sense to how I got here, systems engineering and consulting. And then if I had grown up in the outdoor industry, I would have known all this stuff and I wouldn't have started Guide Theory. If I had grown up skiing or hiking and backpacking and rafting, I wouldn't understand the fear and the lack of knowledge and lack of resources as much. So I think as I look back, I'm yeah, it all makes sense and I can see where it's going.
Totally. And it's so funny because that's almost like the antidote to that imposter syndrome too. And it's something I find myself talking with women about all the time is they're oh my God, well, I have this messy background in adventure or business or whatever it is. Who am I to help somebody else? And it's no, you're actually the perfect person to help other people because you've been there. You have sat in the mess that other people are sitting in. And it reminds me of there's some saying that they'll sometimes use in the business world. That's your mess becomes the message. And it sounds like for both you and I, that's been true for us where yeah, you sat in that mess for a while and then you can turn it into a message once you have the tools to help other people go through it. Have you ever had a wild thought about working in the outdoor industry, but you're not sure how to get there? Maybe you've been guiding or working seasonally and wondering what the next move looks like. Maybe you've got a business idea you've been sitting on. Maybe you just want more impact, leadership, or intention behind the work that you're doing outside. Many of the women that we talked to didn't grow up thinking that a career in the outdoor industry was available to them. They came to it through a guiding job, a passion project, or a pivot that they just didn't plan. And somewhere along the way, they realized, wait, I could actually build something here. Western Colorado University's Outdoor Industry MBA was built for that moment. It's online and cohort-based, meaning you go through this program with the same group of people and a supportive faculty the whole journey. It focuses on sustainability and business skills specifically for the outdoor world. You pick a track, product, or service based on where you want your career to go. The Western Colorado University's Outdoor Industry MBA is the only program of its kind in the world. We need more women in business leadership. If you feel the pull to develop your own business skills in the outdoor industry, the Outdoor Industry MBA at Western Colorado University is enrolling now with classes starting in late August 2026. We are thrilled to partner with this incredible program and invite you to check the link in the show notes to learn about the program. And now, back to my conversation with Sasha Clonts of Guide Theory. Well, what struggles and challenges are you seeing, especially 2026? What are you seeing seasonal workers experience now that non-seasonal workers might not even realize is an issue?
Yeah, so I think a non-seasonal worker, kind of coming back to that idea of empathy, would have to actually imagine what it's like to be hired as a raft guide, not knowing how much work you're going to get, when you're going to start, and when you're going to be laid off. Not having a mailing address and not having proper residency requirements. Okay? So you're starting in May. You might work 7 days a week come June, but if the tourism's down or the river's down that year, you might only work 3 days a week. So there's uncertainty built into the plan itself. But then you have a consistent transition every year. So you get laid off as a seasonal worker. You might not know when. And then you probably are moving and changing your address and all those things. So I think in terms of what are some of the struggles of seasonal workers, all of kind of the pyramid of how we build stability and routine in our life gets shifted all the time. And if you don't have a system for that, then I'd argue 30% of your capacity is just dedicated to constantly figuring those things out or avoiding the thing that you don't want to deal with, like healthcare, because you don't understand your residency. And as seasonal workers, you might have support from your employer, but you lose that support typically at the end of your season, whether you're a ski instructor who gets laid off in April, or a raft guide who gets laid off in August. So seasonal workers, the things that kind of take care of our lives and make our lives work, health, finances, housing, are the things that are in constant transition for seasonal workers with a lack of constant support.
Is there anything that you've learned about sustainability and lifestyle for seasonal workers that you think non-seasonal workers or even corporate workers could learn from that they just haven't thought about yet?
I remember my first couple months in corporate America being I'm going to do this for the next 40 years. This day, I'm going to relive for the next 40 years. And I know I had just talked about how all of those transitions can be exhausting. And I think they are exhausting without systems. But I think as humans, it is so invigorating to live in tune with the seasons, in that once you understand the flow of your seasonal lifestyle, plan it out and understand it truly. And if you have those kind of baseline blocks built and understood and figured out, you get this beautiful life of getting to ramp up during your summer, work super hard, but with a community that's all in it together working really hard, and then ramp down and get a break before you do that again in the winter. And you are in tune and hopefully outside working with the seasons. I think, to me, I understand the appeal of the life and purpose and adventure so clearly, because whether you're someone that uses that in between shoulder season for travel or rest or building knowledge and certifications, you get these defined blocks that you can really appreciate, because you're not raft guiding for the next 40 years straight, nonstop. You get this season with this group of people that is your family and community. And you'll probably stay in touch with some of them and see them again, but it'll never be the exact same. And I think having these defined seasons and blocks makes it so much more beautiful, kind of like a lot of the benefits of summer camp, honestly, especially with that community building and the temporariness that makes it so great. Like, we love skiing because we can't do it all year, right?
I am obsessed with seasonality and the idea of like leaning into different seasons, whether that is of planet Earth in your career, or for everyone listening who isn't a seasonal worker. I totally believe that we all have inner seasons. And I got really stoked on this concept almost 10 years ago now, when I got really into my menstrual cycle and learning about how I feel at different points of that cycle opened my eyes to how I feel at different points of any type of cycle, like the calendar year, my creative cycle, my daytime energy, and how that ebbs and flows. And like by tracking that long enough, I was able to see really distinct patterns on when my energy is up or down. So that's, I think, something that corporate life can take away from the seasonal industry and outdoor industry, is knowing that there are ups and downs, and that's fine. It's more about knowing what your energy patterns are and how to leverage those to like plan ahead, for example. And I think like something that's a conversation that's come up a few times this month, actually, with just totally different people, has been this idea of, are you more of a like creative and work sprinter or marathoner? Because some people really love that seasonal vibe where you go really, really hard all summer and then you don't have to work all winter. Whereas I'm more of an ultra marathoner. I would rather work less every day, but work more days throughout the year. And that's just the way that my energy goes. So I think it's really valuable to take a moment to reflect and wonder, where are you on that sprint to ultra marathon spectrum for energy?
Yeah, I love that you related it to kind of like the menstrual cycle phases, because I think it's the same concept of like tracking these things and reflecting on it can allow you to truly design your life in a way that's fitting. Because, you know, the seasonal work super hard a few months, take breaks and fully enjoy it does not work for everyone. But I think we have been conditioned. I mean, at least I felt like I had been conditioned to like not question the life I was going into. And I think just tracking and bringing awareness to like, hey, every October, I feel pretty tired is really a helpful thing, and recognizing what brings us energy versus not. And I was just talking with someone who's in the guide theory ecosystem, Izzy, and we were talking about how we could bring like cycle awareness to the rafting industry, because burnout as a concept in the outdoor industry it's really hard to deal with, because you're following business demand. Like, this is when we make the money, and you have to have the resources to do it. But bringing that same idea of just like bringing awareness to the community of like, hey, this is what happens like in a woman's month. And if I can kind of schedule myself to not work 7 days a week, 12-hour days during like my late luteal or something, then I might actually give a better product and especially if I'm like more supported and my community understands what I'm going through. So it just kind of, I think it's all, to me, so connected, and just the bringing awareness to it. You don't have to change anything necessarily, but recognizing what our patterns are.
Totally. It allows you to give yourself so much more grace on those times when everything feels harder than it needs to be. You can be like, oh, here's the reason why. Even today, even talking with you and other people, I've stumbled over my words more than I usually do, because I'm just a few days before I start my period. And I know that I do not have my normal communication strengths at that point. So I feel okay about it.
Yeah. And especially being able to like tell or like have your community understand that. So if you could tell a raft guide next to you, like, hey, lifting this boat is literally harder today, and they could understand that and take you seriously, I think that can make a really big difference in the outdoor industry community, especially as women.
Whether our listeners are menstruating or not, I'm wondering if you have any, in general, what are your top tips for seasonal workers who want to live a more sustainable lifestyle, if they say they want to do seasonal work long term?
I'll give kind of the first 3 phases of what we go through at Guide Theory in the Shoulder Season Series. First, it's in doing a life audit and really assessing kind of what's working and what's not. Kind of that theme we've been talking about already of bringing awareness. Just not accepting things as they are, but seeing things as they are and bringing awareness to them. And starting to really vision map what we could make our lives. Like, I'm a firm believer in we can make anything happen if we can say it and recognize it as a thing. So I'd say that first. Next is plan accordingly. Like, I know so many seasonal workers who hadn't actually written down what each month of their year is going to look like in terms of housing, health insurance, estimated income, and estimated expenses. And just having some model prediction gives you so much insight. Like, that in itself, incredibly helpful exercise. Third is being able to tell your story between all of that. So if you have maybe set a goal of like what you want your seasons to look like, and you have an idea of like how your income, expenses, and logistics are filled out, then you can actually start telling a story to people and yourself to make sure that part 1 and part 2 can actually align. And what I think telling your story is such an important part as a seasonal worker, because you are more than just what your job is at the moment. You're more than a raft guide. You're more than a ski instructor, patroller, or a forestry ranger, anything. If you can tell your story of your goal, then the coolest thing about being a seasonal worker, honestly, is you get to meet so many people who want to help you. When you take someone down the river or guide them through a canyon, like, they connect with you. You might be like literally shepherding them through their only like true outdoor backcountry experience of the year or outdoor experience. You just never know. And if you can confidently tell your story, like by being kind of curious and bringing clarity to what you want, whether that's, I want to make, I want to start a farm, or I want to make, fleece hats for folks. Like, I think a lot of seasonal workers tend to have a creative hobby, or I want to be a career raft guide. If you can tell that story, you never know who you're telling that story to, and what kind of opportunities you're going to run into. And I think as a seasonal worker, you don't even realize how important your impact and connection is. Like, the product that people are like experiencing at the end of the day, whether it's in the mountains or river or anywhere outdoors, completely falls back on you as the person like guiding that experience. Like, you make that experience. And so you have a lot of impact and opportunity there.
Is there anything I didn't ask you about that you want to bring up or talk about?
We started this conversation kind of with the imposter syndrome and how I kind of ended up accidentally on purpose in the outdoor industry. But I think looking back on this conversation, even the theme to me is like curiosity is what allowed me to kind of beat out the imposter syndrome, and just instead of like, what if something bad happens? What if something good happens? And I think for anyone who is waiting for the right guide to start to learn a new skill in the outdoors, the more experiences I get being curious and learning, the less afraid I am to keep doing that. And I hope we all can not be afraid to do that.
Keep Sasha's question in mind. What if something good happens? What if you say yes to the trip, or start a side business, or find sustainability in seasonal work, or try a new sport? We all feel imposter syndrome at least sometimes, but Sasha's curiosity and creativity show what's possible if we go for it anyway, whether it's your first time skiing or building your own business. Or, I suppose, joining us in the Grand Canyon for a room-to-room adventure this October. Don't forget to check the show notes if you want to hang out on this bucket list desert adventure together. Sharing the See Her Outside podcast with others is the number one way to support us so that we can keep creating episodes that help close the gender gap and diversify adventure media. Send your friends to cairnproject.org/podcast or just send them a link to your favorite episode. A 5-star rating and review from you can also help us keep creating episodes that inspire women and girls to share their voices and adventures with others. See Her Outside is brought to you by the Alliance for Gender Equity and Outdoor Adventure, hosted by me, Angie Lake, and edited by Allison Castonquay. Make sure you subscribe or follow now so that you don't miss our future episodes. Until next time, go get outside.